Hi there everyone and welcome to the second part of the course. Here we're going to start on the modelling of our robot. So, to start we'll create a sphere. Now we'll go to the symmetry and perspective. Let's take the sphere and in move we get this new menu. And we're going to transform the sphere, which is a sphere in Dynamesh, to a normal 3D sphere. If we activate the mesh, you can see that there are all the cuts, the segments. As I explained earlier, you can model perfectly, no problem. And from these controllers here, I can choose where I want to cut the sphere, like this. Okay, so let's put in 10 and 28 and make a cut around here like this. Exit the Move tool. And now our first primitive is transformed. So this is going to be the shell or the body of the model. Take this, click on the icon and go back to the 3D gizmo. You can go from one point to another at any time. In the gizmo, you can go back to the previous part to continue applying any modifications that you want. In this case, let's go back to the 3D gizmo. Let's rotate the sphere and with Shift, we'll turn it every 5 degrees. And we'll leave it at 90. Now let's go to Draw. We'll start by adding some cuts here. To do this work, we'll use the Z modeler, which is here. Activate it like this. Now we get this panel. And if you've used this tool before, you know that if you right-click the polygon, a panel opens. If you do the same on the corner, you get another one. And if you do it on a point, then you get a different one, okay? Each panel contains actions and where those actions are. Here we select what we're going to do, and here on which polygons or polygroups. And this works the same in any of the panels that we're using. We'll touch on some of the functions, but it is quite a complicated topic, so we'll see it as we go along. If we click on this edge, you see that Insert is selected. That's what we'll use to make the cuts. So we'll click and make one here. Now we'll make a polygon or polygroup selection. To do that, we'll use Alt to select, or paint if you will, these polygons like this. And from the polygon, not from the edge, click and you can tell ZBrush the action you want to create for this polygon and where you're going to do it. So in this case, we'll select QMesh, which is a kind of extrusion, and we want it to only work on this polygon. So as we've made a polygon selection, it interprets that this whole selection is one polygon. So we'll click. And from the middle point of any of these polygons, we can extrude like this. And as you see, another polygroup is created. The polygroups, as you know, are selections of polygons, so to speak. If you press Ctrl, Shift, Alt, you can make selections inside the polygroup. And this way, you can divide the object into pieces. Okay, we'll carry on by making another cut, maybe around here. And with Alt, make another polygon selection and we'll extrude again, but bigger this time, around here. If you think you've gone over, just Ctrl Z to undo. Let's try now a shorter one. Now, from any of these edges, we can click and select bevel. And the bevel gives us this effect on the edges. The next thing you need to do when creating this kind of model in ZBrush is see how the model would look if we added subdivisions. So we'll go to Tool, Subtool, and here in Geometry, you can divide the object. There's an even better function, this one here, which is Dynamics, and it gives us a kind of preview of a level 3 subdivision. This is a direct access that I placed for this interface. So if you go to Dynamic, you'll see the subdivision is at level 3, but this doesn't affect the model. So if you removed it, it would just go back to the initial point. It's very important that while we're modeling, we activate this option every now and then to see how the model looks with the subdivisions. We can add cuts, for example. So if we want this area to have a smoother surface, we can add another one. I still have this set to bevel, so select Insert, and now let's make the cuts. So we could add another one here, making the surface smoother. If you remove Dynamic, you can see how to add the cuts. So let's do what I said, because we don't want these areas to be so organic. So let's add one here, another one here, another one here. On the ends as well. Now let's see how this is all looking. Now the surface is much more defined. Remember to also keep saving constantly. ZBrush sometimes might crash or freeze, so go to File, Save, and just choose where you want to save your file to. So name it, and as I said, remember to save it as you go along. So let's carry on. Activate the mesh viewer and make a selection of these areas here. Select them with Alt, like this. Now remember, Q mesh and a poly, and then extrude. We'll remove the dynamic and make some cuts around here. Go back to dynamic to see how the top part is looking. As always, select like this. extrude, and applying the cuts like before, we can make the surface smoother. So the shell, the top, is more or less finished. So we can start on the bottom. We can add some more cuts here, and we can extrude a bit. So let's exit dynamic, make the brush a little smaller, and we can make a cut here. Now, and we can sink this part here like this. Apply the cuts. And as always, dynamic to visualize the piece. Great. So this is the main shell, or the body. And underneath this, we'll place some legs. They could be spider-like legs. And we can make the legs separately, which is more comfortable to work. Now, we could, for instance, make a hole where the eye will go. We can do this a few different ways, like with anything in 3D. We could click on a point and select split. And now, as you see, we can create a circular cut in the mesh of the model. And we could take this, select, and extrude easily. So you could do it like that, or you could do it starting from a Boolean. We'll do it this way at first, and we'll leave the Booleans for later, for something else. So it's important to use the Booleans in critical areas. For example, if we wanted to make this space here, but over here, well, this area has more cuts, so it's a harder area to make a hole. But using the split point was enough for here. Now we're going to create the legs, or the main structure of the legs, and to do that we can insert a cube. Remember that with move we can define the cuts that we want for this cube. So we'll definitely select the cube, and for the moment we only want it to have one cut on each side. We don't really need any more for now. Go to the 3D gizmo and scale the cube, the leg, like this. Okay, we'll add a cut here. And with the help of symmetry, we'll move these points. So we'll select the point and move. Now this leg needs to go in the center, and we can do that with the gizmo. And why are we doing this? Because we're now going to move the symmetry, and if we do it from this side, as we've moved the leg of the central axis, it wouldn't really turn out very well. Okay, so if we hide this part, the shell with dynamic solo, Now we can only see the leg, and we can work more comfortably this way. As I said, activate the symmetry. X is activated. Activate Z as well to be able to select the 4 points, okay? Then we take these points and do it like this to make it a bit wider. Exit the symmetry with X, and with Control, select the mask of this area, and now click outside of the object to invert the mask. We can rotate using the old gizmo. Okay, like this, we can rotate the piece a little bit. Exit the mask. Move the points. Now we've lost the symmetry. So activate the X. And then from here, we can adjust this. Let's place this leg where it's supposed to go. First, we'll focus on just one, and then we can duplicate it later. If you see that it's too long or it's not quite in place, you can just modify it, and you can adjust the points to get it how you like. You can also make another extrusion, so the legs are even more articulate. And to do that, make another extrusion having Z modeler selected. Sometimes you need to zoom in to see what you're doing properly. You can also work more comfortably by selecting the dynamic solo to only work on the visible subtool with the subtool that we're using. So we have the structure of the leg. And right now we're going to leave it just like that. We're just doing the initial stages of the modelling. Later on we'll finish this leg and then we can duplicate it. So we'll carry on with the main structure of the model. Okay, so let's go to Subtool and we'll select the body, the shell. We could, for example, make a selection like this. Another one here. You don't always have to do exactly the same thing that I'm doing. You can see how I do it, and then you could select different elements. So in this case, I'll make the selection around here. I'm going to do another one here like this. Another one here. And I'm going to extrude this like that. If you don't want the model to be so defined in this area, then just don't add any more segments. Okay, we're going to make a sphere. We can do that here, or we can do it from here. Z sphere. Go to Move. Activate the gizmo. And we want to transform it to a 3D sphere. We'll adjust like this. As for the segments, I think that's enough. But anyway, remember that from the controllers here, you can manage the segments. Okay, we'll leave it like that at 9 and 28. Select the sphere. Exit this viewer. Go to the gizmo. Move the sphere. Let's make everything else visible again. What I want to do now is scale the sphere and place it here. So for the middle option, scale it. And with either one of the gizmos, just place it wherever you want. Okay, so I'll leave it there. And what we'll do is an extrusion in this area to add more detail to this eye, as that's what it's going to be. Before anything, let's save the model by going to File, Save. Don't forget to keep saving as you go along. Now simply make some selections around here like this to extrude these areas. Okay. You could make a smaller one here. There's another way of making this kind of selection when it's complicated to select all this. You could just click and select Polyloop. You can extrude this area easily. Let's add a cut here. Another one here, and in the middle. Now this here that appears when we right click, like I said, it's just another way of selecting polygons. So these here, for instance, these are 3-point polygons. And if we wanted to select this, we could do it like we have done up to now with Alt and then make a selection. Or we could go to all triangles. This way, we would make the extrusion on those triangles only, the ones that are in that subtool. Obviously behind the eye, around here. Well, this would also be extruded as they are also triangles. See? It's important to see what each element is used for to always make a more exact selection. I'll add another cut here. Let's make the brush smaller. Select Polyloop, and then we can extrude again. But this time in negative. Okay, cut here, another one here, another few here. Polyloop. And extrude again. See how it's looking when you apply dynamic. Let's rotate the eye a little, like this. Okay, as you can see, if we want this area to be more visible or more defined, in this case we could add another segment or two. So as you can see, you can add more segments and cuts to all these pieces that we've extracted previously. And this way we get a more defined look. Okay, great. So we'll leave this lesson here for now. And in the next lesson, we'll carry on working on the model and the legs. So I'll see you there.